May I preach to you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. There were two young men who were trying to figure out exactly what God was asking them to do with their life. And one of them said to the other, "You know, I've heard that some people get insight and a sign from God by opening up the Bible and just going to a verse." And he said, the story goes that St. Augustine himself, one of the worst sinners that you can imagine, was converted by doing this thing. So the second guy goes, "Okay, I'll try anything once. Go ahead and do it." So they kind of prayed for a moment. The first guy opens up the Bible and points to a verse, and his face turns pale white. He said, "What is it? What's wrong?" asked the second man. First man says, "Well, it says here, sell all that you have and give to the poor, and great will be your treasure in heaven. Come and follow me." The second guy kind of says, "See, I told you, God doesn't talk to people in signs." I think human beings naturally want some kind of sign to be given to them about what God wants for them in their life. It's only natural. We want not only for us to communicate with God in prayer, but to have a sense that God is also talking to us and giving us the right direction about what we should be doing. And what I find so interesting is that Christians somehow think we invented this. But it's been around a long, long time. Just look at the reading from today from the Old Testament. Just take it out from if you have it in your bulletin. So the story goes, for if we haven't been following along, is that the prophet Elijah has been sent by God to Israel to let them know what they're not doing right. That's kind of what prophets do. It's not about telling about what the future is, but about letting God's people know in the moment how they're not following His plan. And the way they're not following His plan is that the king has created a whole altar and a whole, idolatrous little formation here to worship a God that isn't God. It's called Baal. And the problem here is that Elijah is supposed to challenge him. So he challenges the prophets and priests of Baal and say, "I guarantee that my God is going to show up and your God isn't." And so they do this huge challenge, and all the prophets and priests of Baal show up and they do all these prayers and nothing happens. Well, then Elijah prays, and not only is his sacrifice done, but everything else is consumed, and all the prophets and priests of Baal are killed, and lo and behold, Elijah is now on the run. And he goes back to where he got his instructions from God, Mount Horeb. And God, like anybody who sends somebody out to do a job and doesn't expect them to be back so soon, says, "What are you doing here?" Elijah then begins to explain everything that went wrong. Now what's interesting is, God tells Elijah to stand in a very particular place because he's going to come by. And instead of standing in that place, Elijah backs into this small crevice and crag in the rock, in the mountain, because he's afraid. Because the last time that he had this type of conversation with God, he was made a prophet. And that hasn't worked out well for him so far. And so you read right there, it says, he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. And I think the lesson that we're supposed to get from that passage is that we want the big sign. We want it to be a nice big billboard that says, go that way, exit 23. When in actuality, God is saying, if you really want to hear the plan I have for your life, you've got to turn all this other noise off and hear in the silence what I'm trying to say to you. You know, one of the things that I had to learn when I was studying is I'm one of those people who I have to turn all their noise off. I don't know how some people study with like a TV on or loud music. Me personally, I have to have actual silence to hear myself think. And God is saying that to us too. We want to hear God in the big natural disasters, in the fires and the earthquakes and the wind. But He's going to talk to us in the silence. And when He encounters Elijah again, what does He tell him? Go back out there. You're not supposed to be here. I made you a prophet so that you could go be a sign to the people who need to see you. And that's the other thing. Instead of asking for a sign for ourselves, God is saying, go, I've made you a sign to other people. That's why I'm so happy that we're having a baptism today. Because what larger sign that we can see with our own eyes than the sacrament of baptism taking place to give us a hint about what God's plan is for our life. That's the beauty of the sacrament. There's this outward and visible sign, there's an inward and spiritual grace, and we get to see them both come together. But there's a little bit of a problem that I have with the way that we do baptism, not just kind of in our parish here, and it's not the parish, it's kind of a beautiful font, but our font is kind of small. And a lot of Episcopal churches have that too, where the font is kind of like this bird bath, and it's beautiful, but I want a whole tub. I mean, I want a huge thing here that you walk in and walk out. Because the bigger the sign, the easier it is for us to recognize what's being taught to us. In the early church, when people got baptized, they got completely submerged. And I'm not saying that you have to do it that way now or it's not a valid baptism, that's not true. But think about it. I'm not a good swimmer by any measure of the word. I'm not. I can barely manage a dog paddle. It's why my pool is not taller than 6 feet. Because I'm only 6 feet tall. Now I have friends, and even our own deacon, who loves to dive and snorkel and get underneath the water. No way! I'm not putting my head underneath the water because when you put your head underneath the water, there's a risk you might not come back up. I don't feel I'm saying anything compelling here. When we use that for the sign of baptism, we realize something. When we go into those waters, we're taking a risk. Because we're being baptized into Christ's death and resurrection. And the risk isn't that we're going to die. That's not the risk. Jesus himself has taken that risk away. The risk is that when we come out of that water, our life is going to change dramatically. There's going to be things that we're no longer allowed to do. There's going to be people we're no longer allowed to hate. In fact, because of the waters of baptism, we're now promising to God, through Christ, all the things that we're going to do to be His disciples. And that's a pretty big risk. Because we like our lives the way we are. And now these challenges are going to come upon us because we've died and risen with Jesus that say, you talk about love, you need to love everyone, even your enemies. You talk about, bless you, you talk about being in community. That means not just being by ourselves, but being part of a church spiritual faith community, where even when things get tough, we stick together. So as we get ready for baptism this morning, I want each one of us to look at that water and to see the challenges that are right there. And would we do it again? Because many of us were brought as children, just as we bring a child today. But I encourage each one of us as we read through that baptismal covenant, concentrate on your own baptism as well, and on my baptism as I will as well. And say, Lord, what are you calling me to do? So getting back to the thing about being assigned, each one of us is called to be assigned to other people through what we do and through what we say and to how we behave. And it can be very, very simple. I would not recommend doing it with just a t-shirt. We talked a little bit about that. It's not just wearing something that says, I love Jesus. There was a parish carnival where a guy was very proud of his t-shirt that says, come and follow me to St. Swithin's Episcopal Church. But unfortunately, his wife was wearing a different kind of shirt that said, I'm stupid. So it mitigated a little bit of the message there. Instead of realizing, we realize that we're human billboards, but instead of thinking about what we wear, instead, think about the actions that we do to all of the people in the world that Jesus calls us to serve. The poor, the helpless, the dying, the prisoner, the unborn, everyone who is loved by God. And when we begin to do that, then hopefully people will begin to see what Jesus wanted everyone to see. That they will know that you are my disciples by how you love one another. And then beyond that, how you love all people.
Amen.